everybody, it's me, Steve Schnee, the CD Junkie. On this episode of CD Junkie, I'm not going to be talking about CDs. I'm going to be talking about comic books. No, I'm not going to get into the Supermans and the Batmans and the Spider-Mans and the Iron Mans and the Ant-Mans and all the other men. I am going to get into some of the more odd comic books that I have, the pop culture related comic books, or some of the comic books with cool covers and concepts and weird concepts. I used to buy comic books when I was a kid. I'd buy a couple, maybe Jolly Rancher sticks, like a watermelon stick and an apple stick, and a Superman comic book or a Jimmy Olsen comic book or Spider-Man or something. And I got out of it for years. I got back into it for a little while when my daughter was very, very little. And then I got out of it. And then I got it back into it about 5 years ago. And I spent a couple years building up a collection, trying to get into the new stuff and not really enjoying the new stuff, and going back and buying trade paperbacks that collected some of the old comic books in beautiful, vibrant colors. And plus I would pick up some of the odd, single issues in like, the used bins or the, whatever you want to call them in comic book shops. And some of these things are so fascinating. Now, of course, I never paid a lot of money for these. And I would pick them up when they were close to the price range I wanted to pay for them. But unfortunately, when the pandemic hit, money became tight and I had to make a decision. Do I want to keep on buying CDs, or do I want to buy comic books and CDs and go broke and be homeless and have to push around a couple shopping carts filled with CDs and comic books? And I chose that I had to give up comic books. Now, I didn't give them up totally because I have bought some here and there. And I will continue to buy some here and there, but I just can't get into it like I did for a few years. But I did pull out some stuff that I want to show you. I think that this is really fun, and I hope that you enjoy it. Okay, we're going to start off here. Back in the day when Mad Magazine was super popular in the 70s, which is one of its many heydays, a bunch of comics started coming out and sort of tried to ape the same type of humor. Plop was one of them. This is one of a couple issues that I have, and I want to get some more because I certainly do love the artwork. I think Basil Wolverton does covers on a lot of the Plop magazines, and he's just such a great artist. Here's another variation on it. This is a Marvel's version. It's called Arg. I remember buying this when it was actually out in, I forgot what year it was, and there's probably mid-70s or so. But this, of course, has vampire on the front and lots of stuff going on here. This is not one of those magazines that parodied Mad, but it's called Groovy. This was, very 60s groovies-ish, so I, of course, had to get it. Now let's get on to some just kind of cool covers here. Here's a Boris Karloff. There's a series of Boris Karloff Tales of Mystery, and they always had cool covers. And Boris Karloff really didn't have anything to do with them except he licensed his name. Here's another great cover. I love this cover. UFO flying saucers. And it looks just like giant jellyfish flying through the air, but it's wonderful. I especially love the cover of the Occult Files of Dr. Spectre. Look at that creature underwater there. It's absolutely wonderful. I guess it's a squid or something. And then here is Captain Venture and the Land Beneath the Sea. Just love that cover. Fantastic. Sometimes, yes, if the price is right, I will buy stuff just because I love the artwork. Now let's get into some other odd stuff here. There's a series of Christian religious comic books. This one is called The Gospel Blimp. I guess this was when blimps were really popular. I don't remember that being a thing. And here is Timmy the Timid Ghost. Obviously Casper the Friendly Ghost, and then Timmy the Timid Ghost. Of course, I love Westerns, and here's some old classic Western comic books, Texas Rangers. And of course, here is Six Gun Heroes, the Gatling gun. Anybody remember Radio Shack? Well, DC got together with Radio Shack to give away a free comic. This featured Superman and Wonder Woman and the Computer Masters of Metropolis. I love this cover. Mandrake the Magician fighting one-eyed aliens. It's really, really quite goofy and fantastic. Now, this is a more modern comic book, and I bought it just for the title, Alien Toilet Monsters. This was issue number 1, and I found it not engaging at all, so I never went past this. I don't even know if they went past one issue. I love sharks, and any comic book with a shark on the cover that looks as menacing as that one. This is the Frogmen, and there is a menacing great white shark. I absolutely love that. Now, I grew up being a fan of John F. Kennedy, so I had to get this. This was printed just mere months after he was assassinated, and I had to save up a little bit of money for it. It really wasn't that expensive, but I didn't have a lot of money to burn at the time, but I was glad that I actually found that. The reason I bought this, it's Elvira, and you can't deny the covers of these Elvira comic books. So that's all I'll say about those. But then the Kool-Aid Man. Can you believe the Kool-Aid Man actually had a series of comic books dedicated to him? Just a few of them. I think maybe 3 issues or 6 issues or something. I have quite a few, but this is issue number 1. Now let's get into the real pop culture stuff here. Here is one of the issues of the Welcome Back, Kotter comic book. This is the only issue that I have of that. Here is another TV series here, Adam 12. One Adam 12. Then, of course, you've got Dark Shadows. And I've only got 2 of the comic books of Dark Shadows. This is one of them. And then I have a couple books that combine some of the original issues of those, so I can read those. Then here is Get Smart. Of course, everybody loves Maxwell Smart, Don Adams. Here is something else here. This is Sergeant Bilko's Private Doberman. And then, of course, there's an issue of the Mission Impossible comic book. There's a series of those as well. Here is the A-Team, and this is issue number 2 of the series. I don't think that I have anything beyond this, and maybe issue number 1. And then one of my favorite shows when I was a kid, Lancelot Link, Secret Chimp. This is the only one that I own. Oh my gosh, $6 Million Man. I was a big fan of the first few series of that. I think the show jumped the shark when he grew a mustache. Oh my God. Zephyr Winds, which blow on high. Lift me now so I can fly. The Mighty Isis. But then, of course, Butch Cassidy cannot go anywhere without the Sundance Kid. So I've got a comic book dedicated to each of those. There could have been a series of these. I'm not sure. And then let's get into some movies here. Walt Disney Bedknobs and Broomsticks comic book adaptation. How the West Was Won. I love this movie so much. It's absolutely fantastic. Now let's get into some Annette Funicello. There is Walt Disney's Babes in Toyland, and there is Annette there. Spinnin' Marty and Annette. And then finally, The Monkey's Uncle. This was the movie, and the theme song was performed by the Beach Boys featuring Annette Funicello. And I really don't have enough room to move this around, but there is Annette down there at the bottom. Now here's some celebrity comic books here. Here's Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis, one of comedy's greatest teams. And here's Bob Hope. And strange, in the comic books, they always seem to be putting Bob Hope with, Frankenstein, Dracula, the Wolfman. Here's another one there. I guess that was a big thing at the time. Now here's 2 comic books featuring probably the most unlikely star you'd ever think would appear in a comic book, and that is Don Rickles in Superman's Pal, the new Jimmy Olsen. This was Jack Kirby in the 70s bringing Don Rickles to the comic books, and there were 2 of them. And I absolutely love those so much. I'm a huge Don Rickles fan. Now, before we get into the music side of things, here's a series. This is DC and Hanna-Barbera. And what they would do is they would take Hanna-Barbera characters and reimagine them in the DC universe. So they didn't really look like the Hanna-Barbera characters. This is Nightwing and Magilla Gorilla. This is Super Sons and Dynomutt. Here is Superman and Top Cat. And you can see Top Cat right down there. Here is Deathstroke and Yogi Bear. Hey, boo-boo. And then here is Green Lantern and Huckleberry Hound. And here is Aquaman, but I had to get the variant cover. Took me a little while, like about another month or 2 before I found it. But as I told you, I love sharks on covers. This is the variant cover, and I absolutely love that cover there. Now, Archie's always been one of the most famous comic book characters, and his reinvention in recent years has brought him face to face with Batman 66. So it's the Adam West and Burt Ward version of Batman and Robin, along with a more modern version of the Archies there. So there is that, and this is a variant on that cover. And that really looks like Adam West, as you can tell. Here's issue number 2, and you can tell that they use the classic TV villains. Now here's issue number 3, and they're going to have a surf contest there. Issue number 4, again, definitely Adam West there. And then issue number 5 of Archie Meets Batman. And there we go there. And then the final issue of Archie Meets Batman. And of course, there you go with more sharks right there. Now, Archie also met the Ramones, the Monkees, and this is only one variant of the Monkees. You can see them right down there at the bottom there. But yes, Archie meets the Monkees in that episode. Archie meets Blondie. And then finally, this is not music, but I had to throw this in, Archie meets Sharknado. Now, let's get into the music stuff. This is just a sort of an homage to the Clash's London Calling. And this is the Mighty Thor, Asgard Falling. I love that. And of course, you can see it's a record up there as well. That's definitely a very, very fun cover. I never read the comic, but I love the cover. More music here. New Kids on the Block. They actually had a series of comics out. Never bothered to read it, but I still own it. Here's something called Killer Groove. Never read it, but it was something about music. And I remember getting it because I thought, oh yeah, that looks cool, and I never bothered to read it. So who knows? It could be really, really good. Here is Gunning for Hits. This is actually co-written by Jeff Rogvi, who has been in the industry for a while. And each of the covers. Now, first off, you can tell that this is that same sort of font as the old compact discs. But see, Bowie seems to be a theme on all of these covers here. There's there, and I don't think that's Bowie, but what the heck. So that's a series there. I think there may have been a few more issues, but I could not find them. Then, of course, disco was really popular. So Dazzler, there's issue number 1. She was a disco star and a mutant, and eventually ended up, I think, hooking up in a couple issues of the X-Men later on. And here is another Dazzler comic, Last Stand in Disco Land. Again, I've never read the Dazzler comics. Actually, I did read this because it was later reissued. This is an original copy, and it was later reissued. And then this one, usually when I buy the old comics, they're already in their bag and boards, and I'll buy them for covers if they're, cheap enough. And usually a lot of these things I find in like dollar bins and things like that. But that's fun there. Here's an interesting one. This is part of the Ice Cream Man series. And this story here is based on like the final years of Bill Haley, from Bill Haley and the Comets. Many years ago, I read the story about him in his final years. And when I read this issue, I go, wow, yeah, whoever wrote this got the idea from, reading probably that same article that I did about Bill Haley. Now, this picture doesn't look like Bill Haley, and it's not representing him, but the story, if you read it, and you'll know exactly what that's about. Now, here is X-Ray Robot. Never read it, but it is a parody of Madness's One Step Beyond album, so, of course, I had to pick that up. And here is Spoof. Now, this is kind of like Mad Magazine. I showed you earlier, ARG and Plop and things like that. Well, here is one where I guess David Cassidy is now president of the United States. He won the election, but you can also find the Osmonds, Jackson 5. You can find Lennon. You can find the Stones in there. And so I had to pick that up because that's a no-brainer. And I think, of course, that's Yoko Ono right there probably. But definitely something to check out and see if you can spot who all the stars are. I had to pick this up. It's called I Love You. And, okay, I love you if you're watching this video. But it has a David Cassidy poster in it. Now, before I find the David Cassidy poster, I stumbled across this ad. And it's got things like Donny Osmond, Black Sabbath, oh my gosh, Bob Dylan. So many artists here. Chicago, and this is any 14 of these hit records for only $2.86. And now I'm going to show you the amazing lifelike pull-out poster, David Cassidy, right there. Yeah, it looks exactly like him, doesn't it? Uh-huh. But it's so fun to have, I'll tell you. Okay, moving on. Here is an issue of Binky, but see here, it focuses on the Osmond brothers. Oh my gosh. Of course, I had to own that. Of course, of course, of course. And then here are 3 issues of the Monkees. Not in very good shape, but I at least wanted to own them. So I have some Monkees comic books in my collection. Speaking of which, I do have a Partridge Family, but I could not find it for this video. And one of these days I'll show it. Here's an issue of Time for Love. And of course, it features Herman's Hermits on the cover there. Lady's going to bed and she's listening to Hermits, and I believe they do appear in the comic book. I'm not going to open it. Let's get to some Beatles related comic books here, and this is The Ringo Kid. Has absolutely nothing to do with the Beatles or that Ringo, but he's fast, he's wild, he's Ringo. Fan-friggin-tastic. Now here is a Jerry Lewis comic book here. You may think to yourself, hey, the Beatles aren't on the cover. And you would be absolutely correct in saying that. But if you open it, you will discover that there is a panel right down here featuring the Fab Four. Yep, that's the only picture of the Fab Four in the entire thing. But since I found this for a great price, I had to pick it up. Now, of course, because of the song She Loves You, the Beatles catchphrase, you know, every time anybody would make fun of them or bring attention to the Beatles, they'd always use the phrase, yeah, 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 right? So I buy all the comic books that feature yeah, yeah, yeah on it. And of course, here's one with Superman's pal, Jimmy Olsen, and Superman singing yeah, yeah, yeah. And down here, I don't know if you could read this all, but it says, bouncier than the Beatles, more electrifying than Elvis. See Superman strut the Krypton crawl. Now here's another issue of Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen, the red-headed Beetle of 1000 BC. And of course you see all the kids saying, yeah, yeah, yeah. Here's another one, Strange Tales. This has Doctor Strange in it, the Human Torch and the Thing. And look at the Human Torch and the Thing. They have Beatles wigs on. And it says the Beatles there at the bottom, but you can barely see it because I can't fit it in with everything in the way here. But there you go. Now here's the legendary issue number 222 of Batman, and it features a reference to the whole Paul is dead thing here. It says, here they come. One of them is dead, but which one? And they're looking at a Beatles album cover. So I think that's quite humorous. Here's a couple Mad magazines featuring, you know, the Beatles. There's the Beatles there at the bottom. And here's another Mad magazine. And I believe that this is the one that originally came with that It's a Gas 7-inch. But I don't have that. But, you know, there's Elvis and the Beatles and a whole bunch of popular celebrities of the era that you can take a look at there. You know, another Spot the Celeb. And it's a great, fun little, you know, I mean, Mad Magazine was always fun back in the day. Now, let's move away from music, and I'm just going to show you the final fun things that I have here. HR Puffin Stuff comic book. They had a series of those. That's the only one that I own. And I don't know how many of these that they had, but I do have issues 1, 2, and 3 of The Bugaloos. Can you believe that? And then here is something I spent years looking for, and the same kind gentleman that got me this also got me the Cowsills comic book. Is that not incredible? That is jam-packed, full of awesomeness. But I have to admit, there's one more that I want to show you. Remember how I said Don Rickles was probably the most unlikely celebrity to appear in a comic book? I mean, at least that's my opinion. There's one more person, and it took me a while to track this down. And I didn't track it down because I like the artist. I tracked it down because I just thought it was the most amazingly weird idea, weird concept for a comic book, and that would be Billy Ray Cyrus. Complete with mullet. They make him seem way, way, way cooler than he actually is. I didn't read it, but I flipped through it, and I guess he's just, you know, he's more than achy breaky heart. Yeah. Oh my God. Just look at these. Yeah. I don't think that I could ever read this. Sorry, Billy Ray Cyrus, but it does say here, dear fan, dreams come true. Billy Ray Cyrus. There it is there too on the back. And, you know, I guess that's the message of this video. Dear viewer, dreams do come true. This little comic segment is now over. Anyway, that's it. That's just some of my comic collection, and I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. Remember to like, comment, share, subscribe, ring that bell for future notifications. And until the next time, remember me. I'm Steve Schnee, the comic book and CD junkie.